Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. And I should have said the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast. I think I left out the word podcast, but I am welcoming to the show today Grégoire de Hemptinne. Welcome to the show, Grégoire.
Thank you. Welcome. Well, thanks for having me, and then happy to meet you.
No, I'm excited to have you here as well. And you're currently in the throes of coming out of winter, heading into, well, spring, if you like. And I'm heading into the depths of winter. And you're in Brussels, but you said it's been quite the winter. How's that been for you?
Well, as always, I mean, usually between January and March, it's very intense. Lots of conferences, lots of new opportunities that come in, and at the same time, you know, like it's winter, so basically very dark, etc. So basically, you're looking forward to having more light in your days, having more sun, because those times where you work a lot and you don't see the sun, it's kind of long, and you're looking forward to have to be over that.
Yeah, I could only imagine. I know I already can see the days are getting darker and, shorter but darker. So like it's never fun. Well, let's see if we can lift your energy up in this pod and this show, because we have quite the impactful conversation to talk about, and it's quite interesting actually. I was just thinking about, as everything starts to thaw out in Brussels and, the water. Yeah, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's interesting because you are the co-founder and CEO of Shayp, SHAYP, which is a Brussels-born water efficiency technology company, whereby you're using AI-powered monitoring to detect leaks and cut waste across large building portfolios. And so I brought up that water piece because I have a question already, and I won't ask it right now, but I'm going to hold that thought there around when water starts to thaw out, from a leakage perspective. But like I said, I'll come back to that. To your leadership, Shayp has scaled across Europe and beyond, partnering with major operators and tracking billions of litres of water saved. Shayp reports 7 billion of litres of water you saved in 2024. You're also an engineer by trade and a 2025 IESC 40 under 40 honoree for social impact. And I know you have quite the vision and the mission of the amount of water you want to save between now and, is it 2030? Correct me if I'm wrong, or it could be sooner than
Correct.
that.
Yeah, 100 billion by 2030.
Yeah, it's huge. It's so huge. Given that you've reported 7 billion in 2024. I love the big mission, and I love the purpose that you have. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about.
Yeah.
Mm,
Overall, if you look from the story of Shape, it was. I mean, it took a long time to get to our first billion of liter of water saved. But then progressively it accelerated because we had more buildings, because we had bigger settlements or facilities that we were monitoring. And I would say today, if you look at the end of 2025 and you cumulate all the savings that we generated since the beginning of the business, which is like over 8 years, we're talking here about 30 billion. So eventually, now
yeah.
that we are there, kind of the goal of 100 billion doesn't seem far anymore. But it used to,
No.
when you start, you said, okay, let's have a big, hairy goal. And then you're
Mm,
like, okay, 100 billion, that sounds nice. But getting
yeah.
there seemed impossible. And now kind of we are 8 years down the road, but we feel, okay, now this seems reachable.
Yeah, I love it. It's incredible though, the fact that you've you've come across and founded such an impactful business, and you've brought AI into it. Tell us a little bit how you came to co-found Shape, and where did it come from, and what made you find this opportunity?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and I think just to put things into perspective, explain a little bit of my journey. So I've been always passionate about nature. I'm a mountaineer. I'm a climber. I've been going to the outdoors, so I'm passionate about that. But on the other side, I'm also passionate about technology. I'm a computer science engineer, and I've been, playing around with computers and making my own kind of stuff as a kid, even doing some programming. So I had like two passions in life, and during my career, I was always having kind of two lives: the lives at work, where I was a computer science engineer, and after work, the outdoors crazy adventure guy. And
Love it.
eventually, those two worlds didn't really coexist well because, you can be a technologist and you're talking about, making, I don't know, I've been working for banks, I've been working for telecom companies, making them more efficient. But eventually I was also kind of another person on the other side. And it's through that journey, of growing as a professional, meeting people, etc. At some point, I decided to do an MBA, which is kind of giving me a bit more perspective on the technology itself. And after that MBA, I said, okay, now I'd like to, try as much as possible to combine those two kind of worlds together in a way. And
Yeah,
this is
love
where
it.
I met my
Mm.
co-founder, who was at the moment, facing that problem of water leakages in buildings. And he said, "Yeah, we have this
Mm.
problem, and it's kind of hard for us to track anomalies in buildings." And it happened that I've been working in data anomaly before. Was working for anomaly detection in clinical trials for a pharma company. I was like, okay, well, eventually this is just translatable into data analytics. So how about turning my knowledge into monitoring water instead? And so that's how kind of I came across that problem. And eventually I said, well, this seems kind of logical for me. And I mean, starting a business makes sense. I'm an adventurer person. So, going every day in my day, not knowing what's going to happen, having to figure out a way, finding a market fit, finding customers, creating the right technology, that made my life an adventure. And I think it's kind of the way I see the combination of those two worlds eventually getting together as a
Yeah.
professional, and I'm having fun every day in my adventure, let's say.
Yeah, it's incredible. Tell us a little bit about the AI component and how your business is powered by AI, because we have had a chat where you've explained to me, and I couldn't believe it when you were talking around, there's a whole, situation with energy and AI, but there's also this whole situation with, you were talking about the freezers or the fridges and the water. This was, yeah, like, can you explain a little bit more around what the
Sure.
impact by saving these billion, yeah.
So in essence, I mean, it all started. Well, we started the business monitoring buildings, and we were making nice savings there, and our product is powered by AI. So that's the first thing, indeed. So we track the water consumption in the building, and we have that AI
Mm,
tool that would scan the water consumption in real time, and as soon as there's an anomaly, it would send an alert to the building manager. Now that's one part of the spectrum, but then we were looking for, how to expand that technology across more geographies, across more buildings. And one day I came across the challenge that data centers are having in large industries, which is they have such a big water footprint. But at the same time,
mm,
usually it's not necessarily compressible because they still have to refrigerate their data centers or they have to make their operations work. They want to reduce their footprint, but they can't. And
mm,
by talking to them, I was figuring out, okay, but how can we help the AI world, in particular here, because we're talking about data centers, to reduce their footprint? Is there a way for that? And eventually, what I came across is, well, their challenge is save water for sure, but on the same watershed at the same moment. So it's not like what we can do with offsetting of carbon, where we think, oh, well, let's plant trees in the middle of the Amazon forest to offset your carbon footprint here. That doesn't work. Water has to be
mm,
offsetted at the same time in the same place, which makes it a
mm,
bit more complicated. But then thinking further, I was like, well, you know what? I mean, we've been equipping buildings and generating savings. So what about equipping public buildings, schools, hospitals, municipal buildings with our technology at the cost of the data centers so that they can be engaged with the local society, with the local authorities. They can contribute to the local ecosystem, and at the same
mm,
time, they generate offsets. And so this is a new model that we developed a few years ago, which is basically sort of a water offsetting model, where we work with the data centers, but also with the local activities, local ecosystems, schools, for instance, a lot, and they can benefit from the technology for free. In exchange, they
incredible.
basically engage with the savings. And also in exchange, they get more acquainted with what is the use of water? What does that represent?
Yeah.
It happens to be that universities and schools are the more risk, I mean, the more risky buildings in terms of water damage and water
Mm,
saving. water loss. So there is also much more savings to be done there because the kids don't necessarily take care of their buildings in the first place. So when you start to put
Yeah.
technologies in their hands, suddenly they get engaged. They want to, try to make savings, try
Abs-
to change a bit their behaviors. And so it's very nice because that's kind of a complementary approach where everyone benefits from this.
Yeah, and that's where I love the two worlds colliding in terms of, like from a climate perspective and your, love for nature and, ensuring that, our society, our ecosystem at large is continuing to regenerate, as well as what we can do with the latest technology. And so that we are also then change the behavior of consumers, of society as well. I just love the whole interconnection of it because you're literally putting together what is a disconnected ecosystem and putting it back together in a way that is fully interconnected, but also now enables it to continue to thrive. I just love that. I love the way you've thought about it. It's just very pioneering. I've never heard of, what you've just been talking about and the way that I'd never thought about water, the way you've talked about water.
Yeah, actually, what inspired me in the first place was indeed the carbon credit market is kind of one of my inspiration, but also the fact that I noticed that, big companies need to be engaged with local communities. They have a disconnect
Mm,
and they are, using the resources. And so there is a lot of tension between local communities and large corporations because, yeah, of course they generate work, but at the same time, there's lots of frustration. If there are ways for them to engage in a positive way with those communities, it generates another link between them and it's
mm.
kind of making it beautiful again. So this was my initial thoughts, and I was thinking about, but there is an opportunity there. Why don't we make them work together?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Tell me a little bit about when I was going at the start of the pod, and it kind of came out as a random, not random, but more of a formless question, if you like. But is there some sort of synergy or connection with, you're coming out of winter where everything's starting to thaw out, there's less snow, etc. Do you see a trend in terms of more water leakages when you're kind of moving out into, like, do you see that more in the commercial buildings that you're working with when you coming in, is it a seasonal thing that you notice, I guess is my question, or you see more of versus when you're in summer? Does that make sense what I'm
There
asking
is
from a
no, but
water
there,
leak?
absolutely there is some seasonal element to it. So what I
Yeah.
notice is that when people get into the winter, suddenly they don't care so much about water, but they care about their heating. They care about their
Mm,
energy bill. That's kind of suddenly
mm,
becomes the focus because that's what they're going to consume more. So
yeah.
the bills are going to be higher. But when we get into, I would say May, June, and summer, then suddenly we get into a season where water becomes a thing. They see that they're
Yeah.
taking care of their garden. There's less water available. That there's just, I mean, more concern about water because it doesn't rain so
Mm,
much. And so people, it's kind of more on the top of their mind, which we realize this is also when there is more traction on a product. Not on another note though, we're doing B2B. So I would say since the sales cycles are long, it happens obviously that a bit every moment around the year we do have business interactions with and deals coming through. But I would say definitely from a full awareness perspective, there is more happening over the summer than over the winter because energy kind of is more on the top of the mind of people. We went in 2023 through a little bit of a crisis because at some point there was the energy crisis in due to the war in Ukraine in Europe. And so suddenly the price surges in terms of energy were quite impressive. And due to that fact, we had little sales because the people who are buying our technology are
yeah.
usually energy manager. And so they were a bit affected by their purchasing capacity during that time. Now, today, we also feel somehow that, due to the new geopolitical changes, there is some
Mm,
tension on the energy market. So we know that there will be challenges for some energy managers to say, look, now it's kind of not the moment for me to invest in a new technology. But there's still one thing that changed slightly is the notion of sovereignty of water. People understand that
mm.
word much better, and they also understand the importance of, taking care of that resource because this is a resource that we need to operate our business. And so suddenly it's kind of a
Absolutely.
mindset shift towards business
Yeah.
continuity, business risk. If you have no water, you cannot operate your building. Let's say you have a hotel, no water,
Mm.
no tourists. So, or if you have even like just a factory, I mean, you need water, whatever business
Yeah.
you have. And so this is really something that has changed in the mindset of people. And so water is less of just a commodity that you don't really care about. It has become something very much important, and I see this towards regulation, towards yeah, just sovereignty has become a topic. It's not only about
It's such an
environmental
important
friendly technology.
Yeah, it's such an important word though, isn't it? Because even look at what's going on, like you say, from a like even with the Middle East war at the moment, etc. Like it's almost like I'm reflecting a lot at the moment on our basic needs, like petrol. I don't know about you guys over in Brussels, but there's a whole thing around petrol at the moment, and oil, and everything else. And I mean,
Yeah,
that's not necessarily a basic need, but it's like cars and all of that sort of thing. And then you talk about like water and the importance of it. It really is becoming I can never pronounce the word properly, but I'm tongue tied. Serenity, I'm just going to say it that way, but it is because it is so critical to the future, and it's something we can't live without. So we have to almost nurture it in such a way that it is so important. I love that you think of it that way, and the fact that you're changing behaviors. You touched on something in terms of being an entrepreneur, founder, leader, and in trying times like you talked about in 2023 and even now, and the ability to have to pivot. Tell us a little bit about that, because you've been 8 years in the business. I'm sure there's been many times where you've had those moments of hands in, head in the hands, and you're just like, oh my goodness, what do we do now? What keeps you lifting yourself back up and having that ability to continue to, I guess, I mean, your business is, the brand is Shayp. I love that. And there's a reason for it. I know. So I'm sure there is something in there, but yeah, what keeps you going?
it's a good question. Well, first of all, what keeps me going is, first of all, the impact that we're generating, the smile on our customers. Like when you have suddenly a bingo, so we call this a bingo, when the customer has a big leak that he didn't notice and that it's kind of could have been very bad if he didn't detect it. So that's called a bingo. So let's call it, like let's say 1 cubic meter per hour or something, a broken pipe in the building. And thanks to us to kind of fix it immediately. I mean, that puts the smile of my face. So that's definitely something that is kind of energizing. You see that what you're doing
Yeah.
has tremendous impact and that the customers are happy. But I think indeed, when you were talking about pivoting and keep going and keeping creative and understanding the market, I think what has been exciting along the journey is that the entrepreneurship journey is constantly about exploring new things, learning. And I'm very much, a curious person. I like to explore. I'm a bit like I said, I've been an adventurer, but also an explorer. Is kind of okay. What is the next problem? How do you solve this?
Yeah.
And we started the business saying, oh, let's do this for first public buildings, and then we said, yeah, but maybe public authorities. This is a long sales cycle, so let's see for households. So we tried it for household, and that was too expensive. And then we're like, oh, but what can we do? And then we switched to retail businesses, large real
Mm.
estate owners. And then they said, oh, but maybe we should look into the insurance sector. And so it has always kind of be a bit of navigating. Now we're in
Mm.
discussion with utilities that now kind of only 8 years down the road say like, oh, but actually we should offering this service to our end user. So
Yeah.
finally, kind of we managed to create more traction to the utility businesses who were not interested before due to the fact that they're very kind of slow, big ships, like that don't really embrace technology immediately. So basically, that has been kind of the journey. I think what is exciting is to keep your mindset open, and
Mm.
that topic that I just mentioned earlier about generating offsetting of water usage of water footprint is something that I came across at a conference. I happened to be sitting next to someone from Microsoft at the table, and we chatted, and eventually she was talking about a problem that they wanted to solve, because usually they had like some offsetting project with agricultural settings where they were like putting technologies on fields to reduce their overall water usage in order to reduce the pressure on the watershed. And I was like, oh, but if you're doing this on agricultural field, why can't I do this in cities with buildings? And maybe there's some parallels there. And so it kind of all derives from a conversation that happens,
Yeah.
at a conference. And it was a bit of serendipity being there, talking to her and getting inspired, and then seeing her maybe a few months later, because we kind of keep chatting, and then, hey, but let's now do it, like, let's try to make this happen. But that comes also through the beauty of, being an entrepreneur, meeting people, getting inspired by what other people think, and just being open-minded. I think that's the key, being, I would say, yeah, open-minded, obviously, but also patience, and sometimes a bit, giving the energy that you need. I mean, don't expect everything
Yeah.
to fall from the sky from day one.
No.
But yeah, perseverance is
Yeah.
potentially one of the biggest strengths that you need to have as an entrepreneur.
I agree. And that serendipity, I think that what comes out for me is the ability to be able to network, connect, continuously have conversations. I think there's something, around almost, I call it speed dating your product in a way where you're testing out your product, you're talking to people, and you're also getting feedback constantly. So that ability to then shape or reshape what you need as you go. It actually makes you a better entrepreneur, a better founder, but it also reminds you that, you're not alone in terms of in this kind of, it is messy some days, other days you're like jumping for joy. The next, like your energy oscillates between high, low, in between. Quite often you can be operating in survival mode, then you get back into this optimally thriving mode. I think the ability to be self-aware and just know that it's no day is the same is really important when it comes to building a business. Do you agree? Like, do you
You
think
know,
that that's really cool as a founder or a leader?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Like when I was an engineer, well, I'm still, but when I was just an engineer, I thought like, you build the best product ever and everyone will, go to you and buy it from you.
Yeah.
Um, that does the kind of, and then you learn a few marketing techniques. You say, yeah, but let's do, put some KPIs, monitor your product, and then you can improve it. And that sounds great on paper, but eventually, first you need customers. If you don't have any customers using your thing, you will never measure anything. And so, I've been learning it the hard way, because in the first place I was like that. So I mean, I did all the kind of noobs errors, getting into, let's make a great product that works,
Mhm.
happy, happy, happy. But eventually you realize that building the product itself is not necessarily the hardest. It's, creating that whole ecosystem that works together, having your suppliers, having your product, having your clients, having your channels, having your partners. And that took me some time. But I would
Yeah,
say
and I also yeah, yeah, sorry,
that's
you go.
part of, your Lego blocks, you're building your thing with
Oh,
different
you
Lego
are.
blocks, and eventually it looks
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and I think you're also shaping and shifting it constantly. You're shaping and shifting those Lego blocks so that they can fit. But the other thing that comes up for me also is ensuring that your story is really interconnected and integrated. From the story of you as the founder or co-founder, if you like, but also then from a product perspective, but from a business perspective, then the story that you're sharing with your team, the story that you're sharing with your customers, it has to
Yeah.
be. It takes time to get that go to market story right, if you like, and that it feels like, oh yeah, it's just a simple get, because we quite often overthink it so much, and then we sometimes, I don't know, at times we can overcomplicate it. So it's kind of constantly having to also then get back to the basic, get back to, you know what I mean? It's like water. Water is something that is so fundamentally important and so required. And it's
Yeah.
like a business. It's like a story, like and what you're doing. I mean, I shouldn't compare the two, but I'm just getting back to the ability to be as clear as possible.
There's still something that has to be said. I think, like, building a business is obviously, being agile and building that, but it also comes with some industries that are kind of slower than others. I think the water
Yeah.
industry being, the way it is, I mean, usually water is cheap. Any kind of disruption on the water can be of a big challenge. So basically, utilities are also kind of risk averse to to embrace
Yeah.
technology. And at the same time, it doesn't hurt so much businesses because in the list of the bills that they have every year, water is kind of at the very bottom.
Yeah.
So it has never really been a priority for many people. You know, you open the tap, the water is there. You don't really worry too much. That doesn't help. You know, as a impact business, we really wanted to focus on water because that was
Mm.
important for us, the impact that we could generate. But I understand as well why the market took some time to get into this technology, and it was not obvious for everyone to kind of embrace this. Fortunately, we had some, I would say, early adopters that were like convinced from the first day. Uh, but this is required, you know, as an innovator, you need your first partners or first early adopters to get started and be convinced that there is a way, right? But some markets are faster than other. When I see, you know, some innovation, you know, growing like 3 digits per year, like as a startup, it kind of looks very sexy.
Mm.
But I think we sometimes also underestimate all the work that has happened before, you know, the exceptional growth from some companies. I think even
Yeah.
OpenAI, actually, when you look at their growth today, is kind of very exciting and very impressive. But we should not forget that they have been working behind the scenes for like 10 years, if not more, before, you know,
Yeah.
releasing the first product. And I think
Yeah.
this is something that is important to realize as an entrepreneur too.
Yeah, which is a great segue because when you booked in for the pod and I asked you what's one unique insider lived experience when it comes to life, leadership and or business, you said impact builds up with time. To change the world, you have to take little steps at the time. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's those, 1%ers that's the continuous taking a step forward. But eventually, with discipline and commitment, your impact adds up. It's hard for me to believe we saved 30 billion litres of water so far through perseverance, ups and downs, challenges of all sorts, yet always standing strong. Tell us a little bit, Greg, about Grégoire, I should say, about the perseverance.
For me, perseverance is about understanding that there are highs and lows. And it's not
Mm.
because you're in a low that it's time to, you know, stop or something. You also have to take a step back if you're in the low, and you know, try to understand what's happening. So I think perseverance is about that. It's also about being surrounded with people who can also hold you up when you're kind of in a shaky moment. Having advisors, having mentors, having coaches that can also sometimes be a resource that you can go to when it's kind of a bit blurry in which direction you need to go. And I think this is also one of the success factor of entrepreneurs is people are not, I mean, not self-made men. You're not, you know, just suddenly becoming the best of the world by your own. Actually, there's a lot of people around you that are helping you, giving you tips, giving you advice, helping
Mm.
you to just take a step back, helping you just to relax, because sometimes you also need friends who just go take you out
Yeah.
and say, Greg, don't think about this right now. And also, you know, obviously your team is very important. Those are people who can, you know, support you in tough moments. I think perseverance is about going to all these and being able to use your network, use the people around you in the good way with their contribution. You're making better choices, not necessarily needing to have, you know, backseat drivers. That's not what I'm saying. It's more having people who are knowing you and contribute on the outside to to your growth.
Yeah, I also think perseverance, when you talk about impact and impact builds up with time and the ability to take those little steps, one thing that it keeps coming up for me is that ability to be present also, like stop thinking, just not thinking too far ahead, like
Yeah.
what smelling the roses a little bit as well as a leader, entrepreneur or founder, because we're always chasing generally the next big thing, right? And like you look at the success you've had to date. Yes, you've had all the highs, you've had all the lows, but so I just feel like we sometimes forget just to stop, stand still here and just actually go, you know what? Wow, like look at how much water I've saved and we are on target to hit our goal by 2030. We're also changing behavior. We're making a positive impact on the environment. It's incredible. And yet we quite often forget about that. But it's called that's deep perseverance, because you've just stuck to, as much as you've probably gone here, there, and everywhere in terms of pivoting to get back to, all right, this is our focus. Don't you think? I think that's really important too, that we stop and
Yeah,
reflect, because we never tend to do it. We're in such this fast-paced world. Obviously your business is using AI-powered monitoring. You're right in the thick of the tech. We can get so swept up in it, yet we forget to almost just stand back and put ourselves in nature for a second, ground our feet, take the shoes off, and actually just remind ourselves, well, this is what's important.
absolutely. Absolutely. You can get lost into the future oriented, but
Yeah.
sometimes just looking backwards, say, oh well, wow, actually I did so much. And also like when you're ambitious, you tend to see the big step in front of you and it like the big mountain and you want to get there, but actually don't look always at the mountain. Just look at the next little step that you're going to do. Because if you're constantly looking at the big mountain, you may first of all be at some point, desperate to get there. But also sometimes you will not take the people with you because they are not as ambitious as you or they don't see that mountain behind that you see. So bring
Yeah.
the people one by one step at a time. And even if sometimes it's frustrating because you want to be 3 steps further, but you'll get there. It's kind of a matter of, being uh, paced in your approach. And I like to
Yeah.
compare this with when you climb a mountain. You don't climb a mountain by running.
Mm.
You climb a mountain by walking slowly because you want to keep
Yeah.
your energy towards the summit. It's like a marathon, same principle. I mean, you
Great
don't
one.
start running like a crazy from the start. You know your energy. You want to save it till the end, and that's the story about entrepreneurship. Is don't run, just go step by step, and you'll get there.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And coming back to purpose, tell me, you have a lot to juggle. You're a father, you're a husband, you're a founder, a co-founder. So you've got another a partnership, marriage, if you like, with you as a co-founder. But also you're a CEO. So you've got the double hat in terms of wearing the CEO and the co-founder hat, and your background's engineering. How do you juggle it all? Like, how do you, when we're talking about taking one step forward at a time, like, how do you ensure that you're also keeping your own cup full as well, as giving out to every, wearing all these various hats that you wear?
Uh, well, there's one thing that I do every day is kind of telling me, eat the frog. Like don't procrastinate, don't try to wait for the problem to be solved by themselves. You know, start to, a big problem that you is on your list that you need to tackle, do at least one per day. And I think this is a methodology that I use to kind of make sure that things doesn't get stuck. But at the same time,
Yeah.
where we just talking about it, don't look too far into the big thing. Just try
No.
to make one thing good every day. So that's the first thing that helps me. And don't, of course, don't judge yourself too fast or too strongly. I mean, obviously you cannot be perfect. There are people that you're not going to be able to answer. There are things that you are not going to be able to do, even though you love to do them. But just try to at least make one thing move forward every day. And it's the same with, I mean, with some part of your life where you have to make sure that those are safe spaces. I'm taking here the example as a father of my kids, like when I have the time, between, I would say, 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. I mean, that's more or less the time where we have dinner, when we have time together. This is time that I save for my kids. And
Oh,
regardless,
gorgeous.
I know people want to have meetings at that time. I'm like, no, this is time that is saved for my kids. And same in the
Yeah.
morning to prepare them for school. That doesn't prevent me from sometimes working late hours in the evening, but at least that's a
Mm.
moment where I'm fully present. My phone is kind of off, and I make sure that I'm there for them. And again, those are moments that you can save in your life to kind of make sure that you can be your fully yourself, fully sharing and enjoying the moments. And I think you need those kind of moments. I mean, you can go for sports as well at some point and say, okay, that's really my moment to make sure that you take care of yourself. And I think indeed, like you have all these hats, right? I mean, you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of your kids. You need to
Yeah,
take care of the company
100%.
as a CEO,
You
but as a co-founder, and then
do.
you have your board, you have shareholders, etc. And eventually, you cannot do everything at the same time. That's just a matter of fact. The thing is just seeing, okay, what are the priorities and what can I do today? And it's okay. Don't be too harsh on yourself if you not manage to do everything, as long as you manage to do some things well. And so again, it's about, that pace. Okay, it's okay. I'm not going to be able to do everything, but one at a time. I have my to-do list and I check the things, like, and then
Yeah.
I cross them, and then like it feels so good when you can cross something and you're like, okay, that's done. It's
Yeah,
never
totally. No,
done,
it
like
does.
sometimes it's just sending it back to say, okay, this is my first draft. I know it's a draft, so it will come back and I will say, hey, but this is not good. But at least I did my job, and
Yeah,
kind of that's
I agree.
how things gets flowing.
I agree. And I think that comes right back to, like, like you said, keeping your cup full. And I think when your cup is full, you are clearer, you're a better founder, you're a better CEO, you're a better parent, because you are present and you have that ability to have the fresh perspectives, and you're at your best. I call it you're shining your brightest. You're feeling and performing at your best. And that's what you want. You don't want to be going,
Yeah.
showing up in any hat that you're wearing, not being your best self, because it's not fun, is it? Two final questions for you. I'll save the big question till last. Shape. How did you come up with the brand name Shape?
Actually, I didn't come up with it myself. It was my co-founder, but I think eventually we were looking for a word. First of all, a domain name that was still free, a short
Mm,
word, right? And then eventually we're like, well, shape, that sounds good, because we can, of course, the meaning for us is like we can shape the orientation of the flow. So that's what we want. To prevent
I love
leaks, you
it.
need to shape it. But there was also at that time we were like not sure whether we would do only water, we would do also energy, etc. But you can do shape water, you can do shape energy, you can do shape whatever. So it's kind of a neutral word. And so which we liked. And then obviously it sounds a bit like a word, when you have the Y in the middle, sounds like a nice brand. So it's like, okay, let's go for it. So I would say
I
this
love
is kind of a combination of some creativity and some openness, because we didn't know where we would eventually get to. But eventually, yeah, we kept the same name for the whole time.
Yeah, I love it, because it does. It allows you to keep being fluid. It's like shapeless, like water. Like it's constantly, moving and going with the flow. So my next big question, well, final question is then, what does shape look like in, past 2030? Like, what is your big, like, what does water look like in, I don't know, in 10, 20 years' time? Like, what will be the shape of water, do you think? Have you thought that far ahead? I know we've all been talking about staying present, etc., but there's just so much change and opportunity. My big view is that as much as there's a whole heap of doom and gloom in the world, I also think there's endless possibility right now for humans, for society to become a much better place, and a much, much better power in people, better, better environment, everything. Like, do you have a perspective?
Well, it's a very good question, and it depends, of course, how long in the future are we looking for. But I would say my vision is that more and more the notion of net zero water is going to be a thing by itself. We're not only going to monitor your carbon footprint, but the water footprint will be something very important. And I see technologies now available to basically be able to fully be water autonomous, or if not fully, at least 99%. So I really think this will become some of priorities of some businesses to more and more go towards that. I also believe that the utilities will get into this game, as I mentioned. I mean, certainly now they see the benefits from it, but till today, they were incentives were not aligned for them as well, because they're still charged most of the time the water by volume. So basically, the more they sell, the better. If there's anomalies behind the meter, that's the better for their revenue. So that incentive model was not aligned with their interest to kind of tackle water loss at the building level or at the client level. Now, I see this I would say in the next 10 years, having water tanks, having better water recycling technology, so that you can use your gray water 1, 2, 3 times sometimes for the sake of your own usage. And indeed, businesses also investing in these kind of filtering technology so that they can also take care of their own quality of output of wastewater. That's a bit where I see the evolution. So more awareness, more protection eventually of the water, but also water quality. I mean, water quality has been a big concern in the water space for
Yeah.
quite some time now with the PFAS problems. We're not so much involved with that problem, but I see this as well evolving with more, involvement or more investments, sorry, into those technologies that can prevent PFAS to go into the water waste, etc. So yeah, for me, the future of water is being more resilient, reducing
Yes.
your footprint, and eventually making the the way of life and the way of society more resilient also towards climate changes or climate issues, so that we can face these disasters or these challenges in a
Yes.
more solid way, in a more resilient way. I think resilient is really the word that I would use
Yeah.
towards society challenges.
Yeah, I'd say anti-fragile, like the ability to continue to bounce forward, not just bounce back from resilience, but bounce forward and do it in a conscious way, don't you think? Like just be super conscious in terms of how we're all doing this. Final question or final bit of
Absolutely.
advice that I'd love from you is you're an entrepreneur or you're a founder and you're in the lowest of lows right now with your business, but you have something in terms of, it comes to an impact business, but you are like, if you think about probably the lowest moment you've had, you and your co-founder in your business, what would be one piece of advice you would give to anyone struggling right now, but knowing they can see this North Star? What would be the piece of advice you would give them to keep going? If or what would be the advice you would give yourself if you could go back in
I
time?
think I think the most important thing that I've learned along the way is be honest with yourself. Be intellectually honest.
Mm,
If something doesn't sound right, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you kind of convince yourself that no, but it's going to be fine. Or maybe the customer interview that I did, they didn't understand the problem properly, or well, just self-reflect. Intellectually be honest with yourself. Okay, what is really going wrong? Is it me not asking the question right? Is the market not ready to hear my solution? Or it could also be, like you have cash on your bank account and you're like, it's fine. We're going through that tough time and we'll have enough cash. Be honest with yourself. If you think this, make sure that you really think it's okay. Or are you convincing yourself through that little inner voice that no, it's going to be fine, but so that's really the piece of advice that I think is the most important. And we sometimes tend to forget about that. I did at some point in my career, and it's expensive to pay after. So yeah, I would say that's
yeah,
the best advice I can give to any entrepreneur.
Yeah, thank you, Grégoire. How do we find out more about Shayp? How do we find out? Yeah, if we want to find out more, where do we go?
So find us on LinkedIn, find us on our website, shape.com, SHAYP.com. And yeah, I mean, at any water conference, we try to be there present. So don't hesitate to drop by your place or stand or booth, and happy to meet you there.
Thank you, Grégoire. And I'll also share your LinkedIn profile also. Thank you so much. I
Thank
love
you.
what you're doing. It's so impactful. It's so required. And yeah, I'm wishing you utmost continued success in saving billions of liters of water and obviously hitting your target and beyond. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
You too. Enjoy.